In this clip, I will discuss and show some slides about formative evaluation of online instructional materials. Conducting a formative evaluation is a necessary step for improving instructor and instructional materials. Too often, students blame their teacher for poor teaching, while instructors blame the students for not learning, when in fact the materials were not suited to the instructional effort. Formative evaluation requires the instructional designer to use the variety of reviewers to evaluate the instructional materials during the process of instructional development to determine the strengths and weaknesses of the self-instructional product. Data collected and utilized from a formative evaluation can improve the effectiveness of the instruction and improve student learning. Students in this course will conduct a formative evaluation of their instructional materials. Number 1, an expert review. Step 2, a design review. Step 3, quality review. Step 4, pilot test. Step 1, the expert review by a subject matter expert, or SME, for currency and accuracy of the instructional material. Ask the question, is the content accurate and up to date? Does it present a consistent perspective? Are examples, practice exercises, feedback realistic and accurate? Is the pedagogy consistent with current instructional theory? Is the instruction appropriate to the audience? Step 2, your design review by a learning expert or instructional designer of multimedia. Ask the question, does the instructional goal match the problem identified in the needs assessment? Does the learner and environmental analysis match the audience? Does the task analysis include all the prerequisite skills? Are the test items reliable and valid, and do they match the objectives? Quality review by 2 or 3 students is step 3. The issues that are considered for that review are that language and grammar used, the displays and surface features are employed properly, the use of audio, the questions and the menus, the subject matter, the directions and instructions contained in the documentation are appropriate. Step 4, there's a pilot test with a small group of students from your target audience. Okay, let's take a look at some slides of formative evaluation, what it is and isn't. Takes a minute to figure out from what you've got so far what formative evaluation is not. Make a few notes. So just pause the video at this point. Just try to speculate what it wouldn't be about. What it's not about is that it's not about the kinds of usual kinds of research that you'd see in education, which is matching learning goals and objectives to outcomes. So formative evaluation is not that, and it's not really about the learner satisfaction issue either. So then what is formative evaluation? Okay, so we said what it's not. Probably you came up with a lot more ideas as well. Perhaps you can think now, okay, if it's not that, what do you think it's about? It's got the word formative in it. We've probably run across that word before, and evaluation in it. We've run across in other courses and also from your own teaching as well. Okay, think about that for a sec. Well, the textbook will say that the formative evaluation is the gathering of information to assess the strengths and weaknesses of instruction in order to revise materials to ensure that objectives are met. Okay, so the formative evaluation, more to the point, I think, is that it asks only one question. What revisions need to be made to these instructional materials? So you're kind of like a devil's advocate with your own stuff. You're going back on your instructions, say, is this clear? Do you think they understand that? Well, ask somebody else. And of course, we've got these reviews in place to find out. Okay. So how does it work? Well, again, we've said that we've got these reviews. We've already talked about these expert reviewers and design review and peer assessment and stuff. Perhaps you can just think for a minute how you might actually put that into practice. Logistically, like, do you have a group that you might be able to work with? Particularly if this is in the spring session, this course, or summer, or sometime when you're not normally going to have your target audience, how would you manage that situation? Probably what you might do is you might say, I'll get a like-minded target group, or group from another class, or group from another session, or, you know, what I did once as a student, I remember taking a group of students that were of the target audience that I was doing research with, and it was during the summer, and I got them in and asked them to do some stuff for me, some research questions, drawing, and so on. So that might, because it's of the same group, same target group, same age, or same kinds of tasks, same mental ability, and so on, considering the decal variables, you can do that. So formative evaluations increases the probability that the instructional material will activate students' inner ear and inner voice to focus their attention to read the on-screen text. Will activate students' inner eye to re-sketch on-screen visual events for themselves. Will enable students' mental drawings of their own acoustic images from listening to sound cues. It's particularly evident in science, where students have to kind of remember a good amount of chemistry, for example, or mathematics, and a lot of the formulae and so on that are involved. But also true of difficult linguistic exercise, difficult if you're learning a new language, so it's true in many different contexts. The goal of formative evaluation is to get at the inner experience, not implementation. Good marks are for how you've managed to tap into the inner experiences of the student. Not so good marks, in fact, not acceptable instructional designs, are simply implementation exercises where you trotted out the same thing you did last semester. Okay, look for these excellent inner experience throughout your entire project. And I won't go again through these. This is the content of another clip, and just want to reiterate generally that readers and listeners process information differently. You should remember that readers recall more of the surface or verbatim features of the text. You'll see if your participants, sometimes if it's important information, they'll put their fingers on the screen. They might take a note or so and try to remember their place, particularly if it's a spreadsheet or something they're looking at like that, or if it's a complex diagram. We're talking about difficult information now, in unfamiliar territory, right? Stuff that is just practice is not, we're not talking about that. That's familiar. Readers recall more of the surface or verbatim features. Listeners recall more of the gist. So this is what you can use as a guide to designing the sound for your visual events. And it's published in lots of different readings that you've got in D2L, so you can pull down one of those and have a look at it, and decide how you want to structure the sound and the sound-picture relationship. So these principles are somewhat new to you, I'm sure. The ultimate aim of multimedia instruction is enhanced long-term memory. Difficult to determine long-term memory if you don't measure a bit away from the time that you actually give them the presentation. If you measure right away, or if you do this formative evaluation right away, you'll get immediate sensations in working memory. But in order to get learning, that will require a delay of some kind, so in order to understand. And that, where those of you may be interested in thesis work, is something we should probably talk about if you're interested in understanding how students might learn from multimedia. Enhanced long-term memory requires that the student can control their own attention to text, graphics, and animations and sound. Controlling their own attention requires students form their own interface, students encode the gist of the sound, students sub-vocalize the text using their articulatory system. So all your instructional design should encourage that, right? Even when you're talking to the participants, some of it may be in the classroom or in a workshop as well, okay? So controlling their own attention requires that the gist is heard as sound and details read as text, every sound to have a purpose or a place. What type of formative evaluation questions would get at the inner experience of student learning? Just take a second to think up. Now I've got hands up there. That's because this used to be an Illuminate live session, which is possible we might do that too. What kinds of things are evaluated in a formative evaluation? These are fault-free questions. You can think about them on your own and talk to me about them in the discussion board. What do the circle sizes represent in Decal? Do you remember? Take a second to draw the circles, label them. What kinds of things are evaluated in a formative evaluation? Remember? Remember what the arrow designates? These things, there are some things in the course that should come to memory. If you see the diagram or you're wondering what you're supposed to be evaluating, these things should be Decal right away. It should become, easy for you to remember. And what you're after is that middle part, which is achievement. Factors that influence achievement. So what do the sizes of the circles represent to you? What do the sizes of those circles represent? You can see that one here in this slide is bigger than the others. We still have you'll see the gray part there that shows achievement, and the error, which is the error of measurement and administration of the treatment and so on, or the instruction. But the others are so small compared. What would make an environment have such a weight like that? Any idea of that? Perhaps corporate focus formative evaluation. If you're working in a government facility, if you're working in a Salvation Army training college, if you're working in the McDonald's University, military training, TD Canada Trust headquarters, developing training materials. Generally speaking, we're talking about this kind of emphasis, that the environmental emphasis of the company is going to we're not so concerned about learner-focused evaluation here. We're interested in the company. Does all the stakeholders who are involved, are they all taken into account? We have in the course and in the book, we talk about two different kinds of formative evaluation, two major models in the literature that have been around for quite a long time. I'm not going to go through all of these in depth, but I'll just show you briefly. One is called Dick and Carey. The other is Alessi and Trollope. Alessi and Trollope is a more computer-based model. The other is more print-based. And we can see that you can combine, you can compare the two models. This is what this slides are about, is that they are comparable. So any variable that shows up in a Dick and Carey, if you're using Dick and Carey, you wanted, you liked it, you, for some reason, or Alessi and Trollope, you want to use their terminology and their perspective on things, that's fine. So here are the references that are related to, that you can find some discussion about these different models of formative evaluation. Okay, thank you.